Business with a servant's heart. Welcome to the podcast. Inspiration, motivation takes. Listen to the podcast. We're all about to talk about life. Our guests will share their life story. We want you to success in life and business. We're ready and we will start shortly. We're gonna talk about life. We're going to speak on business. You're gonna shine bright. We are going to witness. Business with a servant's heart. With hosts Steve Ramona and Ray. Inspiration, education talks. Listen to the podcast. Steve Ramona.
Welcome, everyone, to Doing Business with a Servant's Heart podcast. I'm your host, Steve Ramona. I am so thrilled to have you join us today. Actually, I'm fired up. Spending 5-10 minutes, well, about 5 minutes with the guest. You guys are going to love this guy. I'm already in love. There's a bromance happening. And you know what's really cool? He's out about serving people. And that's what this whole idea of this podcast, in your life and in your business, both, exploring the idea of being a servant's heart. And we're getting a podcast here. They're going to motivate you, inspire you, and educate you how they do it. And my guest has a unique way of inspiring you. And I'm so excited to share it. Not yet, though. I'm going to let him share. Here's your homework today. I want you to think about how you're going to serve yourself and others today and what impact you create today. And that key word you want to circle is today. Why wait? It's the greatest feeling in the world when you go out and help and make an impact with somebody. Why not do it? I want to thank my wonderful sponsor, Pantheon Alliance. Imagine joining the community of high-income entrepreneurs and business leaders who are creating a world-changing thought leader platform to help not only grow your business, but also make that impact. And with that being said, I've said impact, and there's a difference in the world. You want to do that. My guest today is, and congratulations to him, he just got nominated, or I think added to the Hall of Fame, the California Music Hall of Fame in 2024, right?
Correct, and indeed, and it was a terrific honor. It was amazing. All these people that I used to listen to on the radio and play their records and stuff, they were all there on stage, and I'm like, what am I doing up here with these people? It was just awesome. It was terrific.
Well, Gary Green's our guest. We got right into the podcast. That's how we kind of roll now as we learned about each other. This is Gary Green. Gary, why do you serve people?
I am so glad you started with that, because that's really all the crazy things I've done in my life have all been about just that, about making an impact, about serving. And I'll tell you how it started. I should probably preface this by telling you, when I say all the crazy things I've done, I used to own a circus. I've been nominated for the Pulitzer Prize twice. I have 3 albums that are part of the Smithsonian collection. I'm in the Hall of Fame, as you said. I'm a former vice president of Trump Hotels and Casinos. It's a series of crazy events. But the common thread you just hit, and I wish I'd thought of that before I wrote my last book, because I would have used that as a thread. Let me tell you what inspired all of this. I grew up in Appalachia, as you might be able to tell from this accent. And growing up in the hills, we eventually moved to Nashville, Tennessee. And I moved there in my mid-teens at a really good time, because it was old country music Nashville. And so looking back on it now, some of the things that were just routine, regular Nashville stuff at the time, if I drop it now and tell you about it, it's like, oh, he's name dropping. But it was just life in Nashville at the time. For example, and I'll tell you, I don't really notice it sometimes until it comes out in a conversation. For example, I was sitting around talking with some people recently, and I said, I remember when I was at Johnny Cash's house. John said to me, and they're like, what, you were at Johnny Cash? Well, yeah, he just lived a few blocks away and invited me over to a guitar pull when I was 15. So coming through all of that, I wanted to be a singer-songwriter. I wanted to be a big star in country music. And in the middle of my high school days, we moved to a little town in North Carolina, just outside of Charlotte, called Gastonia, North Carolina. And I'm thinking, oh man, I'm out of Nashville. I'm not going to be able to make it as a country star now. What's going to happen in life? And I went to the library, and I'm checking out records from the library, because you could do that back then. And I stumbled across a Pete Seeger album, the great folk singer Pete Seeger, where he was singing songs written by a woman from this town I was in, Gastonia, North Carolina, a woman named Ella Mae Wiggins. And Ella Mae Wiggins they weren't great songs, but they were interesting songs. She had written songs about her life in the 1920s, things that were going on in her life. She was involved in a union struggle at a textile mill where she worked. And she led every union meeting by singing her songs about her family, about what was going on in the mill. Her songs had such impact in organizing that union that the owners of the union, the local police department, and a group of vigilantes assassinated this woman. Wow. And I mean, eventually people went to prison for it. But here's what it hit me as a young teen. How do you write a song that has such impact and is so powerful that it makes people want to kill you? And the opposite of that is, can you write a song so powerful that impacts them in other ways besides driving them to want to eliminate you? So dissecting her songs, you know, they weren't great songs. I mean, they weren't terrific. She stole the melodies from traditional country songs. The poetry, you know, if you're going to dissect it and look at the meter on it, the poetry sort of sucked. But the message by putting all of that together was so powerful that it impacted people, and it changed her world in that it got her killed, and changed lots of things. What it did for me is it changed my entire outlook on music and my life. And it made me say, how can I have that kind of impact? Mind you, not an impact to get me killed, but an impact that will change the world with poetry, with songs, with music. And so over the years, everything that I've done has been related to that. I mean, I started out wanting to be a musician. As soon as I graduated from high school, I went back to Nashville. I finally took my parents' advice and enrolled in the University of Tennessee, majored in journalism. But even when I became a newspaper reporter and a journalist, think about the time that it was. This was the time of Watergate. This was the time of Woodward and Bernstein. First of all, newspapers were a thing then, and reporters, I mean, who was the most trusted man in America at that time? It was a television newscaster named Walter Cronkite. I mean, news people were the heroes because they were a genuine fourth estate. They were helping change the world. So, you know, my career in newspapers was driven by the same thing you're asking about, wanting to have an impact, wanting to help people, wanting to change the world. And I'll tell you what happened. I mean, I woke up one morning at 26 years old. I'd been nominated for the Pulitzer Prize twice. And I knew people that were my age today who their goal in life is, man, I'd like to be nominated for the Pulitzer someday. And I'm like, man, I've done that twice. What am I going to do for the next 50 or 60 or 70 years? Right. So, you know, I ended up walking away from newspapers. I continued to write, of course, and I focused on my music. I recorded 3 albums on Folkways Records in New York. I toured with those albums. I got into a lot of trouble, but I had lots of fun. I found myself in a unique position that because of the label I was on, and because of the touring, and because my songs were called message songs, I found myself mentoring a lot of up and coming young people. One of the things that got the attention of the Hall of Fame that just never occurred to me that it was a big deal. I had a friend that I had met in New York when I was up there recording in the mid 70s, early 70s. And she had moved to Baltimore where I was living in the 1980s. And she showed up at one of my concerts, and we got together afterwards and we're talking. And she said, look, I've got a 15-year-old son. He's just turned 15. And he's writing a lot of poetry and he's starting to put music to it. I wonder if I could send him to talk to you and let him hang out with you and learn a little bit. So I said, hey, I'll talk to anybody. So she sent the kid over and we hit it off. He had some powerful poetry, especially for a 15-year-old. Wow. Powerful, good poetry. And he started coming around every day, and we were spending, probably for a year, we spent 4 or 5 hours a day together, and just talking back and forth the role of poetry, what his life was like. And after he moved on and I moved on, I didn't really think about him anymore until uh, he became really well known. His name was Tupac Shakur, and he was arguably a founder of the modern hip hop movement of rap music, and was assassinated himself in Las Vegas.
So,
But
yeah, so I want to ask. So you made impact through a powerful person in a great way, made a change. That's another way of serving, right?
and that's all it is, and that's exactly what it is, and
Yeah.
that's the fulfillment. That's the purpose. That's exactly what you're doing, because you know I've been very fortunate in my life that I've been in the right place at the right time. I mean, I was telling somebody at dinner the other night who was asking me about my years as a vice president in the Trump organization. It's not that Donald Trump went to some directory somewhere or talked to people and said, "Hey, who's a really great marketing guy? I want the best marketer I can get." And somebody said, "Oh, call Gary Green. He knows, he's a marketing guru." That's not what happened. What happened is, I stumbled across Donald Trump at a dinner party I was at one night. I met the guy, and so he's like filed away in the Rolodex of my brain. And a few years later, when I was looking for a job kind of job, I said, "Well, heck, I'm going to call up Donald Trump and see if he can hire me at one of his casinos." And that's how it came about. I mean, so it's partially good fortune, who you know, who you meet along the way. And the real important part is, though, you don't need to seek out giants in the world to try to have impact on them. If you can find one person and have impact on one person. I mean, look, when I was sitting there talking to 15-year-old Tupac, neither he nor I were thinking, yeah, someday this guy's going to sell millions and millions of records and he's going to be world. No, we're sitting there talking about what's the role of poetry? How can poetry to be used to change the world? How can it influence people's lives? One of the things he was concerned about then, he lived just up the street from a coffee house that I owned. And I mean, it was in the middle of Baltimore ghetto. I mean, it was just not a pleasant place. And his mother she had some problems by then, and they had no money. And he was very concerned about the influence of drugs in the community. And so he was wanting to know, how can he write poems that'll be so powerful that it will turn people away from buying drugs on the street, from the need to buy drugs on the street. And what we talked about is, you know what? If you can save your little sister from getting involved in that world, if you can save your next door neighbor or somebody that comes to a concert, then you know what? You've done what you set out to do. It's perfect. So that was sort of a long answer to your question, but
Yeah.
everything that I do has been toward that end.
Well, and I'm going to add this and add to it yourself. You just said you didn't know where he was going to go, but you volunteered. He never paid you. You volunteered out of your servant heart to go, Tupac, yeah, let me help you. Mom, let me help you, without knowing it could have been nothing. He could have been just a great poet. Nobody knows about. You'd be extremely happy. That's the power of serving.
Look, if you go into doing anything, if you go into it with the goal of making money, look, that's not a solution. You're talking to someone, and I know this. A lot of old people say this, but this is really true. I have made tens of millions of dollars, and I've pissed away tens of millions of dollars for myself and for other people, and it's not the fulfillment that you think it is. I mean, yes, it's true. Everywhere I fly, I require that my clients pay first class for me and put me up in a 5-star hotel. But you know what? That's a big deal. That's I can just as easily, and in fact, I'd rather take a train across the country and or even a bus. Man, I was raised. My father worked when we were growing up. My father worked for the Seaboard Coastline Railroad. So in my preschool days, we rode on the railroads for free. So I still love the rattle and hum of the freight trains, and being in the caboose. They don't have cabooses anymore, but being in those cars, it was good stuff.
Oh,
You don't,
Gary, you're singing my praises. I love trains. I'm
uh,
with you.
yeah,
So
and you don't
beautiful.
need to shoot for the stars. You don't need to shoot
No,
for first class and $5 million. You really don't. Uh, you'll get there if you need to be there, but there are much more important things and directions in life. And I've had a very happy life doing just those kind of things.
thank you for sharing. That means a lot to me. And audience, I know it means a lot to you, but we're going to dive into, before we run out of time, because this is so awesome, your books. You've written 10 books, man. You are a rock star as an author. Tell us about the books.
Well, first of all, writing 10 books isn't as big a deal as it sounds like. To get into journalism school back at the University of Tennessee, you had to take a typing test. And in those days, we didn't have computer keyboards, you had typewriters. And in those days, guys didn't type. I mean, it just was the way the world was. So I took a typing class in high school. I was the only guy in there. It was all girls in the typing class. And of course, they all helped me learn to type. But I learned to type 80 words a minute, and which is pretty quick. And that's 80 words a minute without mistakes. And so I've kept that skill up over the years. So I can knock a book out pretty quickly as long as the ideas are flowing in my head. I had written books on a variety of subjects, and usually whatever my obsession was at the time. I wrote books on casino management. I wrote books about what the newspaper world is like inside the newspaper world, what it's like being there. I've spent a lot of my life working on the issue of Native American sovereignty. And when we got the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act passed in 1986, and I say we, I had less than a small part involved in it. But when the tribes got it passed in 1986, that opened a whole new world and put Indian casinos across the country. So I wrote a book that became a bestseller called Osceola's Revenge, and it's the history of how Indian casinos came about. And as I continued to write these books, several people came to me and said, "Well, Gary, you should write your whole story as an autobiography." And I said, "Well, that's ridiculous. Nobody wants to read that." And so people kept pushing, and then this Hall of Fame thing came along, and a lot of music people from the past reached out to me. And so I decided to go ahead and write that as the autobiography, but from my musical history, from the musical standpoint. And that allowed me to walk people all the way through all of the adventures, starting early on in my life, from the 1950s all the way through owning a circus in the 1990s, working for Trump after that, to what I'm doing now. So I am going to do a shameless plug for the book, for the latest book, because the coolest thing about it, okay, so there's a hardback of it, there's a song book that goes with it, there's the paperback version of it, which is, it's a paperback version of it that you can or cannot see there. But the coolest thing about it is my publisher put out a comic book version of it. I know I'm supposed to say graphic novel, but there is a comic book version of the Gary Green book, which is just crazy.
So cool. And audience, I told him before, I've had now 680 guests. He's the first one in his own comic book.
Even I can't believe that one. That it's far out. But again, let me go back to where you started this, and that's asking about having an impact. Everything I've done, every single step along the way, and there are a lot of adventures in there. I produced a really well-known Bob Dylan album, and I produced that album as a nonprofit to raise money for a group that really needed some money to do a lot of good work in the world. Even owning the circus, when two partners and I bought the Moscow Circus after the Soviet Union fell apart, even owning that circus was to create jobs and to create economic opportunity for some people that would not have had that kind of opportunity. I'm involved in a project right now where I'm in the process of purchasing a casino up in a small town in northern Nevada, and purchasing that casino and the things that we're doing in that community is going to transform the lives of the Native American tribe that is adjacent to that community, to the people that live in that community, and frankly, in about a 75-mile radius around there, it's going to change their lives in ways that they can't imagine yet. And at the end of the day, if someone says, "What do you want your legacy to be?" If I can say, "Hey, I was able to make a difference somewhere," I'm happy. That's cool. That's a good podcast. That's a good happiness.
Oh my God, it's an incredible podcast. it's and you're an incredible person.
You're kind.
We're coming to the end here. 2 questions. One, how does it feel when you do projects and you make that social impact? How does it make you feel? Because I want the audience to understand how that feels. And it can be small or it could be large, like the project you just mentioned. It doesn't matter. How do you feel?
That I did it. It's the end of the day, and I took care of somebody. I'll survive. I could, I'll get by. But there are people that, without doors being opened, showing them how to open them themselves, or opening them in some cases for them, they're never going to get there. And if you can do that, if you can have that impact, and I don't mean that you have to be some kind of wheeler dealer to do this. Right. It can be as simple as what Ella Mae Wiggins did. You can write a song that people are going to go, "Oh my God, I should do that." The slightest little thing. That's also why, and I'm sort of notorious in some business circles for being highly critical of a lot of business people, because business people that blindly go forward with no goal, no end. My goal is only to make myself richer, and I don't care what happens to the community and the people around me. I've got no patience for them. Moreover, I'll call them out just as soon as I see it. I mean, I call BS when I see BS. And fortunately, I've been around long enough and around enough that I've seen a lot of it, so I know it.
Yeah, and a servant's heart doesn't put up with the BS and acknowledges it. Understand that, people. Don't let people run over you because you're a nice person and you serve. And I want to end with this. Go back full circle to Tupac. Audience out there, you could be talking to the next Tupac. You may never know, but that's why you take the opportunity to serve like you did, Gary. God bless you, man. I love what you're doing. I support you 100%. Audience, we're going to talk about the book in a second. I got one fun question I like to ask my guests. So I've got a reservation at a restaurant for you. It's a table of 4. You're obviously sitting in one of the chairs. And the 3 empty chairs, who would you invite, whether they're dead or alive, and what food would you order?
Food is the difficult part of the question, because I've been a vegetarian for 53 years, but true vegetarians look at me and go, "Man, you're not a vegetarian." A friend of mine coined a term a few years ago for my diet and called me a carbitarian. Primarily, I eat potatoes, bread, cheese, chocolate, and pasta. So, what we're going to order for dinner is going to be a little weird. I think I'm going to let everybody order on their own.
Okay.
Now, who are we going to invite to dinner? That is a cool question. That is a great question. And you made that question a little hard, because we go all the way back through history. Who in history would I like to invite, as well as living people? People are going to think I'm crazy because it's on all sides of the political spectrum, but I'd like to sit them at the table anyway. Folkways Records was founded by this guy, Mo Ash, who I knew really well. Mr. Ash founded Folkways at the insistence of his father's friend, Albert Einstein. So, you know what? I'd like to invite Al and Mo to sit at 2 of the places at the table with me there.
Wow.
Because that would be extremely interesting to hear what they say. Then in the political world, and this is where I maybe separate from a lot of my political friends who know me for my folk music and my activist folk music. My favorite U.S. president was Lyndon Johnson. Yeah, I know about the Vietnam War. I was there. I get it. But I also know about Medicare, and I also know about the Civil Rights Act, and I know the power that Lyndon was able to exude. So I think sitting LBJ at that table would be, especially with those 2 cats, would be extremely cool. I think that would be a lot of fun to see that going on. And then the last spot on there, there was a German philosopher named Rosa Luxemburg from the first part of the 20th century, and I'd like to sit her there. mainly because she'd be slapping all those people in the back of the head every time they'd go off on something, and she'd knock them back in line. And so that would make an interesting meal.
I just reached out to the manager and said, "Can you bring a fifth chair? Because I'm ordering my gnocchi."
I knew that
plus,
I did that.
What a great table.
Or you know what? The way my behavior is, I would give up my chair. I'd say, "Hey, Ms. Luxembourg, please take my chair here, and I'm going to stand over here in the corner and let you guys have at it."
You just ended a podcast in the best way of 680 shows, giving your chair up. Nobody's ever done that in 680 shows. Thank you. I keep saying that number. People don't care. Gary, I've just met you and I love you. I love your heart. I want to thank you for sharing it with my audience. I really appreciate that. How can people find the book or the comic book or the songs?
Amazon. That's the easiest. Barnes and Noble has it. All the bookstores have it. But the easiest way is go to Amazon, look for Gary Green, or look for the book title, The Legend Dies On, and all the versions of it, including the comic book version, pop up. I will warn people, the hardback version is very, very, very long. It's like 700 pages, but it's got lyrics, photographs, and everything in it. The easier read is the paperback version, which is, it's not abridged, it's just cut down a little bit. And then the comic book version is, it's a fun, easy abridgment of it. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Audience, I'm getting the comic book right when we get off the show. Once I say goodbye to this wonderful guy, I can get the book. Thank you again, Gary. God bless what you're doing. It's been fantastic. And you're so welcome. And audience, your call to action at the end is take this podcast and share it. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. And yeah, people do it. I'm going to follow Gary's lead. I'd love to have a million subscribers. But more important to me is this gift is this podcast today. You're listening going, my friend needs to see this, or my friend's a poet, my friend's a songwriter, whatever it may be, or just somebody be inspired. Send the link to them. You just sent them a gift. You served them, because if they listen and they go to Gary's website, which is garygreen.com, correct?
Yes,
your website.
Yes,
and they learn more and they get inspired to do something. Me and Gary may never see it, and we don't care. I'm going to speak for Gary right now. I don't care. But if we impacted them through all this, that's what podcasts is about. And it doesn't have to be my podcast. Any podcast you listen to and it inspires, motivates, and educates, share it with others. Let's get these out and really make a difference. With that being said, me and Gary want to thank all of you for watching or listening to this podcast. And we'll see you all in the next episode of Doing Business with a Servant's Heart. Have a great day, everyone.